Welcome to the Oil and Gas Vlog, where we spotlight companies who provide necessary services and create value in the energy industry. Today we're speaking with Thomas Walker of Evans & Walker, a consultancy that leverages petroleum engineering, experience, and industry insight to assist parties in the need of buy-sell agreements, royalty issues, property evaluations. Tom, for those who don't know you yet, can you tell us about your position and your role at Evans & Walker and a bit about your background?
My name is Thomas Walker and I'm the president of Evans & Walker. I partnered with Barry Evans approximately 20 years ago to form Evans & Walker. Barry has retired after more than 50 years of service to the industry, and I have continued the name with his permission. I've continued the name to both honor Mr. Evans and to acknowledge that he is available as a President Emeritus of Evans & Walker.
So does Barry chime in on some of your work and give you some sage advice from time to time?
He does give me sage advice, and again, he brings over 50 years of industry knowledge to the table, which is very valuable.
So you welcome that?
Absolutely.
Tom, for those who don't know you, could you tell us a little bit about where you went to school and what your degree's in?
I attended Texas A&M University and was successful in graduating with a Bachelor of Science in Petroleum Engineering, cum laude, in 1985. After graduating from Texas A&M, I started working for Mobil Oil Corporation in Central Texas. I worked 3 years in oil and gas starting in 1986, and shortly after I started working for Mobil, oil prices dropped by 50%. My first task with Mobil, therefore, was to do an economic valuation of all the wells in our oil field to determine which ones we should maintain operations of and which ones we would shut down. That project involved about 300 wells, and that project was successful and led me to a love of economic valuation of oil and gas producing properties.
Well, you sort of stole my thunder. A lot of times I like to ask people what was their first job and what about it was the most interesting part. And I think you kind of found your niche very early on. Is that right?
That is right.
So when did you start consulting?
I worked for Mobil Oil in Central Texas for 3 years. I was transferred to a chemical plant, worked in a chemical plant for 2 years, and developed a great knowledge of facility engineering and process. I then transferred back to oil and gas in California, worked in the Santa Fe Springs field and other fields. And in 1999, when oil prices reached single digits, I took an opportunity, took a severance package, and began consulting in 1999.
So when did you meet Mr. Evans? When did you guys get started?
Shortly after I left Mobil, Mr. Evans contacted me and was in need of help on a consulting project for a very large trust valuation. And that was in October of 1999, and we worked together well. One of the things that he appreciated about me was the fact I'm an Eagle Scout, and that bought me a lot of credibility with Mr. Evans.
I'm an Eagle Scout as well, so I appreciate that and I know the effort that goes into that. So tell us a little bit about some of the interesting projects that you've completed over the years.
I've had a lot of various projects. Our first project with Mr. Evans was working with a trust that actually had operations in the Four Corners area. We were able to increase production and clean up a few legacy issues, and were able to successfully market and sell the property at a significant premium over its initial value. Another project that was very challenging yet rewarding was work as a subconsultant reviewing a production sharing agreement in Indonesia.
And making
it was the OCL field.
Okay.
And making a presentation to the governmental agency regulating it, giving them an annual update.
To Pertamina?
It was Pertamina, and the most challenging part about that was the day before my presentation, 2 days before I was flying home, I discovered that I had to include an economic valuation of the project using a software package I'd never seen before. I had less than 24 hours to learn the software, input, get successful output, and report.
Now you could do that in English and not Bahasa Indonesia?
It was in English, which was a blessing.
Yeah, very good. Who typically hires your firm? Companies, titles of clients? Who would we expect to see?
A lot of work that we do is for trust attorneys or for estate tax purposes or estate planning purposes. Another large group of clients are city governments who have operations in their city and need advice when regulating the industry, or when developers propose construction on or adjacent to existing abandoned oil wells.
So your background in operations probably comes in quite handy. As you mentioned earlier, you get your hands dirty, you get out there in the field, you're not afraid to touch and feel the equipment. Oftentimes we see consultants always in a suit and they do everything at arm's length. And can you talk to that a little bit? And when a client hires you, do you go walk their field?
Typically, I will walk the field if it's reasonable and feasible. If I'm looking at a field overseas, that's usually not feasible.
Of course.
But one of the major impacts on my experiences in oil and gas was actually working in the field in summers during college. I learned how to drive the lease and look at the oil wells. I learned how production reporting occurs. And granted, technology's improved, a lot of things are automated. But I still have the ability to recognize accurate quality data and data that is not so accurate.
So tell us a little bit about the risks associated with hiring a firm that might not have the background and experience to do a similar job.
There's a lot of challenges in looking at oil and gas producing properties or mineral interest. One of the roles that we play is ensuring that royalty owners are paid correctly. We've had experience, Mr. Evans and I, with line wells. And the line well is a well that might be located off of your lease, but due to the fact it's within 300 foot of the lease line, you would receive compensation for that. We found several cases where operators, just due to the internal reporting, will not pay the clients for those line wells. And so we have the ability to go through and look in the corners and crevices and ensure that clients are paid correctly.
Very good. So people may be concerned about the cost of this type of a service. Could you talk a little bit about how that compares with a bad outcome?
The couple of examples with line wells, we found over $500,000 for a client when they weren't being paid for a line well. In another case in Oklahoma, we had an operator that was producing gas wells. There were non-operative working interest owners who took gas in kind and were responsible for paying their share of the royalty. Our client was only being paid by one of the gas marketers, and we were able to obtain over $250,000 in back revenue from a gas well by just ensuring that the gas sales listed on the revenue check detail matched the gas sales reported to the state.
So having the right person at first will save you a lot of time and money in the future.
Absolutely.
So what regions do you typically conduct your projects? Are there any limitations to locations that you get involved in?
We've worked in almost all oil and gas producing states in the United States. And again, we've done work with production sharing agreements, one in Indonesia and another in Yemen. There are no limitations, but our core business is in the United States.
Are there places that your firm will not work?
We will work anywhere. I will not drive in Louisiana with Texas license plates, but Texas A&M plays Louisiana State, but I have no problem working in Louisiana and enjoying the people and food.
I understand. So how's business these days in this current market?
Business is good. I typically find that workload increases when oil prices become more volatile, but with the economy the way it is, with potential trade war with China and with sanctions on Iran that might or might not impact production with Venezuela's political situation, there's always a lot of uncertainty that make royalty interest owners and operators wonder what will be happening to oil prices in the future, what will my asset be worth in the future if conditions change.
So Tom, do law firms reach out to you? Are you an expert witness? Are you somebody who helps them evaluate estates? How does that process work?
We've been contacted and worked with various attorneys in the courtroom on legal matters, on expert witness testimony, primarily related to valuation, also with regards to operating and prudent operatorship. When we provide testimony, one of the strong suits of Evans & Walker is attention to detail. We utilize a process to value our minerals. We are very detailed with production, historical and projected future production, with historical and future prices, with operating expenses, and with taxes and with the discount rate that willing buyers and willing sellers would do business at. And with our attention to detail, we're able to provide great assistance to our clients, and usually leading to a successful outcome. One of the areas of expertise that Evans & Walker has is serving as an expert witness in court situations. We've worked with valuation testimony, with testimony on prudent operating of units in the Los Angeles basin, but again, primarily with valuation work. But if you were to have a challenge in a court regarding valuation, we'd love to help you out with that.
So Tom, do you ever get reached out by the local government? You're here in California. Do you deal with Dogger and utilities companies like that?
I have been reached out to by city governments, primarily in relationship to updating the oil code, and specifically updating the oil code to address construction on or adjacent to abandoned oil wells. When you look at an urban area like Los Angeles with land values exceeding the value of the minerals on occasion, there's always an effort to develop all vacant parcels of property, many of which that are vacant today contain an impediment to development. One of those impediments is abandoned oil wells. I've worked with the city of Signal Hill. I've dealt with the city of Costa Mesa, Yorba Linda, city of Los Angeles, city of Long Beach, in an effort to progress development on or adjacent to old abandoned oil wells.
So I guess the LA Basin's pretty familiar with your work and Evans & Walker in general.
That is correct.
So how best for people to reach out to you?
Best way to reach out to us is probably through our website, which is connected to email links, phone numbers, and social media, where you can reach out and get a feel for what services we can provide and how to reach us.
And what's that new website?
The website is www.evansandwalker.com.